This is the BSG Golf Podcast, where we will be talking science, fitness, and everything golf performance. Drive for the dough, putt to go low. In the old days, we kind of talked about it the old way. We talked often about you putt for the dough, and people believed that the putts is how you won golf tournaments, or shouldn't even say you won golf tournaments, how you made the money. But statistics on the PGA Tour are now showing that the driving distance is the number one statistic correlated to the money we earn on the PGA Tour. Obviously, we're not PGA Tour players, and really for us, it's not going to make us any money. But that being said, we all want to hit it further. There's nothing more fun than hitting the ball far. You know, I know for me, I don't get to play a ton of golf, but when I do, even if I lose to the guy I'm playing with, if I outdrive him, I'm totally fine. So really, I don't care. It's all about the hit the long ball, and that's the most fun, at least for me and for many people in the game. People who even hit it far, the one thing that come into the gym, people who come to see us, the number one thing we hear from anybody who comes here is, I want to hit the ball further. They could have back problems, they have neck problems, they have everything going on with them, but still the number one thing they want to do is they want to hit the ball further. So, in this podcast, we're going to talk about some general concepts. We're going to first understand what power is. And this is a two-part podcast. The first part kind of going over the basics, where we're going to kind of, like I said, define what power is, and we give some really simple suggestions for people related to their category. If you're a young junior, or if you're a female golfer, if you're an adult male golfer, whatever the case may be, obviously there's some outliers, but we're going to give some typical things that people in those populations can be doing to help them hit the ball further, right? Everybody's looking to get that increased club head speed. In part two, we're going to get a little bit into a deeper dive, and I'm going to get into some more sophisticated training concepts. We're going to talk about force-velocity relationships. We're going to talk about muscle elasticity, and we're going to talk about something that I call, and I've been teaching for the last couple of years in Mike Adams' certification, called resistors and releasers, which is related to how you look at your physiology and then how that actually is taken and then put into your actual golf technique, using your physiology from a power perspective to help you have a better golf technique. So, power, speed, hit it far, club head speed, all of that cool stuff. Before we can dig in, we really understand, I hear people talk all the time about power. I want to be more powerful. But do people even really know what power is? I think the answer is most people do not know what power is. There's lots of programs out there claiming to be the magic bullet to hitting the ball further. They have the cure, they have do this for 6 weeks, there's all kinds of training aids, you name it, there's a program to help you do it. So let's first start with, from a physiology perspective, what does power mean? Or how do we define power? So power, simplistically, is force times distance over time, right? And so I know many of you are not kind of into the physics of things and this type of stuff, but let's think about force as strength, right? Force is the amount of strength that a person has. Distance, in the golf swing, we're going to think about distance as flexibility or mobility, the distance we create in our turn, the distance that our club travels back and away from the ball is going to be our distance for our power formula, right? So we got the strength part and we have the distance. So strength and distance or flexibility, right? If I'm not flexible, my swing is going to be pretty short. I'm not going to get the club really where I wanted to get it to go. The more flexible I get, the more distance I can have, which will give me more opportunity to get more club head speed. And then time, which is force times distance over time, we're going to think about time as speed. How quickly can we do it? So we have strength, flexibility, and speed. So those are the things we're all really trying to work on in the gym, right? I want to be stronger. I want to be more flexible. I want to be faster. I want to be all of these things. So how and where does this apply to you? And that really becomes the question. And how much time do you have? So we all have limited time to train. And the question is, what's the best place and where can I start and get the most bang for my buck in my training time and dollars if I'm going to be chasing this, beautiful club head speed and trying to hit the long ball. So before we get into that, I'm going to talk about some of the speed programs that are out there and really things that you need to think about as quote unquote prerequisites to doing speed training. Because for me, the speed part is kind of the icing on the cake. But often many of the programs people are selling and promoting are really focusing on the speed part, right? So if you have the the money and the means, what I would say for anybody, you don't have to worry about prerequisites. You go out there and you hire yourself a trainer. You get a proper evaluation. You have an expert tell you what you should do. They identify your strengths and weaknesses, and they build you a customized program that's really for you. That is the optimal way of doing things. Obviously, people, if you're looking for that, you can come here. We obviously offer those services. We even have an online version of that you definitely could check out as well. But there's lots of great certified people all around the country who can help you with that. So again, prerequisites to speed training. Number one is I want to have enough strength and stability to handle high speed, right? So if I'm really weak and I'm not stable, swinging something really hard and really fast right out of the gate is probably not the best idea. That's something that is going to potentially cause me an injury. There's no guarantee, but potentially that's going to cause you an injury. The other thing is I have to have enough mobility and flexibility, because if I'm really tight and I only have a short distance of range of motion and I start whipping stuff around, odds are my tissues are very taut. And those tissues are going to have to now absorb that force. And that force then ultimately can cause as well an injury. So we want to make sure we have the proper strength, stability, and mobility before we start trying to do high velocity, high speed movements. Okay? So let's start with the top of our equation, the force part or the strength part. Again, we said force times distance over time. So we're going to talk about the force and the strength. So who are our candidates for needing more force? The number one people and the biggest groups of people that we see who need more force/strength are our junior golfers and our women golfers, right? They tend to have longer, looser swings. The swing gets really long. The club's kind of moving around. They don't have as much control of their swing and their body, but they got tons of range of motion, right? They're not worried about flexibility. They're not worried about getting the club back or getting a good shoulder turn. What they actually have to do is learn to get control and be able to manage the actual distance they have. Because if you get really long and loose and all over the place, that's obviously not going to be an optimal way to deliver the club back accurately with precision, right? That's a big part of what we want to do there. So what are we going to do? So if I have junior golfers, if I have a female golfer, I often hear from them, I hit it really straight, but I don't hit it very far. What's interesting about that is that when you don't hit it far, it's actually hard to hit it offline, because golf is triangulation, right? So if this is dead straight down the fairway, and where you're not watching this on video, if you're just listening, just imagine a straight line right down the middle of the fairway, and your shot is a 10-degree offline shot, right? So that shot maybe at 100 or 150 yards might still be in the right side of the fairway, but at 10-degree angle, as it continues out, the further the ball goes, the further offline I get. It's called triangulation, right? So a miss at 100 yards is going to be less of a miss than 150, and then 150, 250, and 350, and so on, right? So the further it goes, the more offline I go with the same exact miss. So hence, more power and speed requires actually more precision and better impact alignments in your golf swing. It's why the long drive guys only have to hit one ball on the grid, because when you hit it that far, you literally need to almost be perfect with your impact alignments to get that ball to go in the grid, right? So for these juniors, for these women, whoever it is who are telling me they're hitting it straight, we really need to give them more distance, and we need to get that initially through more force or through more strength. They need to be in the gym lifting weights, doing big compound movements, things like deadlifts and pull-ups and rows and the really basic stuff. Okay, I mean, I often hear from women when we want to get them on a trap bar deadlift and lift heavy weights, like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have big muscles like a man, or all of this stuff. I promise you, do not worry, you will not have big muscles like a man. That is literally physiologically never going to happen, right? When you think about it, I have young boys who come in here, 18-year-old boys, testosterone flowing through their body. They're drinking 3 protein shakes a day. They will do anything humanly possible to be big. They cannot get big, right? So if you're a female or you're a young kid, you do not have to worry about it. If you want to hit the ball further, though, you do need to get stronger. And lifting heavy weights is the number one way to do it. And heavy doesn't mean, you might have this image in your mind of somebody with, plates and plates and plates stacked on a bar. For some women or some juniors or whatever the case may be, one little weight on there might be what we consider heavy for them. It's all a relative term, relative to where you are at in the moment, right? So big compound movements, lifting weights, kind of on the lower rep range, heavier for you. And when you're really struggling to get that last rep or two out, that's where you need to start if you're a female golfer or a young junior trying to hit the ball further, right? So we want to get control of that long distance of the swing. We want to get it under control, get some stability in there. And now we're in our force times distance times time. You already have the distance parts in place because you're already flexible. Now you're going to increase that force part. Your overall power should go up. Remember, like I said in the beginning about the triangulation, though, your golf skill is going to need to improve as well if you want to keep that same straight shot. But hopefully by just gaining some stability and control of the club through strength, your ability to improve your impact alignments will get better, right? So let's do this. Let's take a quick break here. And when I come back, I'm going to dig a little bit into the average golfer, which is the 54-year-old male, and probably most clients that either trainers are seeing and or most of you out there who are listening that you fall into that bucket. And what do you need as the typical golfer to do to help you get your speed and power up to the next level?
Do you want to take your body and game to the next level? Do you want to get a program from the best in the business the same way tour players do, but don't have access or the finances to do it? Finally, Shear Golf is offering various online training options for players just like you. Now you too can have access to the best golf fitness has to offer online, and at a price you can afford. For more information, go to our website, www.bensheargolf.com, to learn more. That is www.bensheargolf.com. SHEAR to spell shear.
Welcome back. All right. So in the first segment there, I talked a bit about juniors and women, and we talked about them as the first part of the power equation of force, right? That they need force or strength, big, large, compound, multi-jointed movements, lift heavy, hit it far. Like for them, that's the first and easiest, lowest hanging fruit for them to hit it far. Now we're going to kind of move along to the next part of the equation of force times distance. And we said distance from a body perspective, we're going to think about as flexibility or mobility, whatever you want to call it. And who does that apply to? Well, that applies to the typical golfer, the 54-year-old guy who's sitting behind his desk. He's, sitting behind the wheel of his car at work, whatever the case may be. That's the average guy playing golf in the United States. And those people are people we see day in and day out. They come in here, they want to hit the ball further, they have all kinds of aches and pains, and the reality is for them that hitting it far, the hardest part for them is they can't get a big turn. And I always ask them, hey, what are you working on in your golf lesson? And inevitably all of them say, hey, my coach is working on me getting a bigger shoulder turn. Well, guess what, people? Your coach can tell you to get a bigger shoulder turn all you want. If you physically cannot do it, you're not going to have a big shoulder turn. It's our job to help you improve that shoulder turn, which not only will allow you to get your club and your body in a better position from an actual redelivery perspective, but will also allow you more distance, which gives you more opportunity to create speed on your way back down to the ball. So what are the areas of the body? What's super important for me as a golfer, as a, in my 50-year-old guy, or look, you could be younger than that as well or older, but I'm just using it as the typical example. What's really important? So the most important parts for people to start thinking about if I'm going to try to improve my club head speed as a golfer from a flexibility standpoint, and I know this is a talk about speed and power, but I promise you this will translate to speed and power and club head speed. So it's weird to be talking about flexibility when the reality is we're trying to increase club head speed. But number one, thoracic extension. So what is thoracic extension? It's a fancy way of having good posture, keeping your body upright. We hear all the time, maintain your spine angles. We hear all those kinds of terminology, right? So everybody today, our postures are all starting getting round and kyphotic, right? We want to be up nice and tall. We want our spine to be nice and long, okay? A rounded posture, my spine starting to round, is not going to rotate nearly as effectively as a straight spine, right? I know there's curves to the spine. I know. But just simplistically understanding that this spine is going to rotate better than this spine will. So we want to get rid of this posture. And why do we have that bad posture? Well, guess what? I'm on my cell phone. I'm on my computer. I'm sitting and putting all day in my office with my little putting green in there. I'm doing tons of things every day that are forcing my posture to get more and more rounded or kyphotic, however you want to think about it. So big important things for us to work on is number one, extension. I know we said from the beginning it's about getting a bigger shoulder turn or getting more rotation, but extension precedes rotation, right? So if you want to get more rotation, first you need to get more extension. So what do we need to do? We need to work on exercises that develop thoracic extension. And then once we've done that, then we can do all of our cool rotary exercises that we do in the gym to work on actual rotation. So that's the upper body piece. Down below, we have an equally big problem. That is our hip rotators. So just like we talked about our posture being bad from being on our computers and being on our phone all day, what's the other thing we do that's killing all of us? Is sitting all day. Sitting has kind of become this century's big disaster. We sit, many people are working 10, 12 hours a day. They're driving an hour each way in their car or sitting on a train, whatever the case may be. And then they come home, they're exhausted from work, and what do? Go sit on the couch to watch some TV. We have sit. So our hip flexors are becoming short and tight. Our glutes are becoming weak. We have all kinds of issues going on. And when that happens, that changes our pelvic position and affects the ability of the head of the femur or the part of your leg to rotate properly in the hip socket. That hip rotation is critical to us not having excessive movement on and off the ball, to again, creating that good hip turn in the backswing so we can get behind the ball and get that distance. So we really need to work on that. What I see from my experience is the majority of people, it's the internal hip rotators that are the issue with it. And oftentimes, even though I talked about this as a flexibility thing, maybe I should use the term range of motion. Oftentimes, part of the reason we don't have good internal hip rotation, especially as men, is that we have weak inner thighs, or our adductors, the muscle along the inside of our thigh. Those muscles are some of the primary internal hip rotation in stance, right? But what do we really do every day, day to day, to actually develop those muscles? Not too much. We get tight in the outsides of our hips and in the fronts of our hips, weak in the back, and our adductors basically do very little. So strengthening our adductors tends to really help. Getting a good stretch on our hip flexors tends to really help a lot. Getting our glutes activated. I know everybody, remembers when, that became such a buzzword when Tiger was complaining about his back and saying, my glutes aren't activated, and people didn't really know what that means. But the glutes are probably the most important muscle in the body for golf. They're what creates us a lot of speed and power. And by sitting all day, they're basically on stretch, and they go to sleep when you leave them on stretch all day. Imagine if I took your hamstring and had you lay on your back and held your hamstring up in a hamstring stretch all day long. Eventually your body will be like, whoa, this is a big problem, and it will just kind of shut that muscle down because it doesn't want to be on stretch all day long. So sitting is putting our glutes on stretch, and it's shortening our hip flexors. So we're short and tight in the front, and we can kind of shut off, for lack of a better way of saying it, in the back. So if I can start improving that hip mobility, I can get my glute strength and my adductor strength going. All of a sudden, I'm going to have that lower body base or foundation that's so critical to having a powerful, explosive golf swing. Under EMG studies, the glutes, or I keep saying glutes, the butt muscles, whatever you want to think about it, right? They're the only muscle in the body that fires 100% at any point in the golf swing. And it's as your pelvis tucks underneath you in the downswing, the glutes really grab on to help create a good, stable base and increase club head speed and power. So we got to get them firing. And we're not going to get that going unless we get the hip flexors loosened up. If the hip flexor stays locked and tight, we can't get the glutes to fire. So they kind of work in conjunction with each other. You need to kind of stretch out the one side and activate the other side. And like I said, that inner thigh, the adductors, they're the ones who are going to help create that internal rotation. So as a right-handed golfer, as I go into my backswing, I go into internal hip rotation on my right leg. And on my downswing, I go into internal rotation on my left leg, right? We get away with a little bit on the left side if I'm a right-handed golfer because everything is kind of being released and I can have some foot flare or whatever. But in my backswing, if I want to have a good turn, I really do need to have pretty good internal hip rotation on that right side. So for us men, and we're trying to play golf and we're trying to get that big turn, like we said, power, we're looking at that distance component, right? There's a lot of work we got to do to get our bodies ready to have a good, complete, full turn to give us more distance to increase speed. So again, as a quick review, we want to get thoracic extension. Then we want to get thoracic rotation up top. That's our progression there. And down below, we want to release those short, tight hip flexors on the front. We want to activate the glutes on the back. and we want to get those adductors a little bit stronger because they tend to be weak for most men. Now for us, strength or the force component, most men, the average man, strength is not limiting his ability to play pretty good golf. I'm not talking about being world class, but most men have the base of strength to basically, I would say, be able to shoot around par from the men's tees. So if our strength base is okay, so our force part is good, this is going to help us with the distance part. So now our power equation, force times distance over time, is starting to come together. We have some force. Now this will give us some distance. Now we're really starting to make a good progress towards increasing our club head speed. So what are some other things I can do? People are always asking me, well, how do I get more flexible? I listed off a bunch of things, and people say, well, I've stretched, I've done foam rolling, I've done this, I've done that, and I'm not getting the changes that I want. I am a big believer in those things. When they're done right, they can be effective. But I'm going to promote something, and with all transparency, I'm involved in this project. I did not get involved with it. They didn't come to me as a project. It's actually a product that I went out and bought to use with my own clients. It's called Stick Mobility. And I believe so much in what they were doing, I actually reached out to them myself and said, hey, look, this product is unbelievable. I would love to get involved, and I think this would really, really help a lot of golfers. So this is called Stick Mobility. You can see it's basically looks like a PVC pipe with some like golf type grip handles on it, and it flexes and bows, and it gives you what they call irradiation back into your body. So one of the things that people struggle with their flexibility when they stretch and don't get results is that the actual lack of flexibility is not a stretching problem. It's actually a stability problem. So it's not a mobility problem, it's a stability problem. The body senses that when it gets into those certain positions that it's weak or unstable. And the body's really smart, so what it does is it tightens up and protects you from going into a range of motion that you could potentially injure yourself from. So sometimes you'll stretch, you feel like you're a lot looser, and then an hour later you're like, oh, well, all that work just kind of went away. If you're a person who's been doing foam rolling, stretching, and kind of made some progress, but not as much as you want, or feel like you always go back to that starting point again, then your problem is probably more stability driven. So what does this stick mobility tool do? It allows me go into a lengthened position, whether it be a hip flexor stretch, a T-spine movement, or whatever it is, and then put tension into the system in that elongated position. So I make the muscle long, so quote unquote stretched, but then I make it actually be strong in that long position. So when you get strong, when the muscle is lengthened, then your body senses stability. It's like, oh, I'm actually strong here. I'm good to go. I will allow you then to access this range of motion. So this is a super powerful tool. If you want to learn more, you can go to stickmobility.com. So like I said, at total transparency, I am involved with it, but I do 100% believe, if you're looking to increase your mobility and want to get that increase in the distance component of your swing, it is a super powerful tool today. We have some really cool programs on there. You can follow along the video, whatever the case may be. All right. We're going to take another quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to get into that time. So force, that is, we're going to get into that time or speed component, and this is a place there's all kinds of programs and products offered out in the golf world for you to increase your speed. We're going to talk about some of them, some of their pluses and minuses, and where this fits into everyone's program. We'll be right back. I'm Ben Shear, PGA Tour trainer, Golf Digest Fitness Advisor, and host of the Golfer's Edge on SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio. So when I first saw these sticks, I knew I had to get involved. 3 huge benefits from this type of program. Number 1, it's going to allow us to get our club and our body in positions to have a consistent, efficient, and effective golf swing. Number 2, it's going to reduce our risk of injuries. And number 3, the big thing everyone is looking for, it's going to allow us to hit the ball that much further. As a listener to the Ben Shear Golf Podcast, you are eligible for a 10% discount on all stick and golf-related purchases from Stick Mobility. Just use the promo code BEN10. That is Ben with the number 10, all one word. Go to stickmobility.com to learn more. That is Ben, the number 10, all one word. Welcome back. All right, so in the last section, we were talking about of our power equation, force times distance of time. We were talking about distance and how that's the most important thing for the average male golfer, right? And that's about flexibility and getting range of motion, getting more movement of the T-spine, the hips, all of that good stuff. So the last part of our equation, we've talked about force or strength, which was good for our junior golfers and our women. We talked about distance. We talked about that as flexibility, and that's great for our men or tight golfers. And then the other part is force times distance divided by time. And time is the speed component of how we do things. So when we think about speed, right, what is really speed? Speed, when we tap into speed, we're really trying to go after our fast twitch muscle fibers. And we're also trying to go after the neurologic system and how the brain is firing messages off to the system to get it to act and react as quickly as humanly possible, right? So oftentimes, many people who are trying to do programs to increase club head speed or speed in general, this is actually where they start. They start by doing speed training. For me, this is the icing on the cake part. We don't start with speed until we have adequate strength, stability, and range of motion. Speed is the icing on the cake. Lots and lots of programs out there. Super speed golf, Mach 3 golf, you name it. There's all kinds of programs that people are doing, selling, promoting, training equipment that are out there. You got to be careful if you haven't met the prerequisites we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, which is not having that enough strength, not having enough mobility, etc., to do it, because you're going to get injured doing these things, chasing speed without having a body that can handle the speed, right? So what do I like about these types of training systems? And there's lots of them out there. I just named a few. But what do I like about them? They train the nervous system. Just like I said, we're going after the nervous system and the fast twitch muscle system. They do that, which is great, right? Some of the stuff you do them, they actually train sequencing. And what is sequencing? Sequence is the order in which the body should fire for optimal speed generation. So we look at, under 3D, we want to see the pelvis fire first, then the torso, then the arms come, and then the club comes last, right? So we want to see this pelvis, thorax, torso, whatever you want to call it, arm, and then club. So some of the drills that you do in some of these programs are also helping you with sequencing of motion, again, which is really valuable, right? People tend to like them. They're fun. It's a fun thing. You feel like you're swinging golf clubs, or they're golf type movements. They're really, really specific to golf movements. So if you're a golfer and you love golf, if you feel like you're doing golf moves really fast, that's a fun thing. So adherence is high, enjoyment is high. They are tapping into some important pieces of the puzzle that can help you get better, right? So I am not anti any of these programs. I love these type of programs if they are put in the proper place where they actually belong. Well, what do I not like about them? Well, what I don't like about them is there's no evaluation, and there's most people don't meet the prerequisites. Just, I see golf professionals, go take one of these classes, and they're like, oh, on every Friday, I'm going to have a speed class for our members. And they are not experts on the body and or physiology or any of this stuff. There's no physical evaluation, so I don't know how strong you are, how stable you are, how flexible you are. And then we just start having people whipping these things around as hard and as fast as they can. I don't think that's a great idea. If you're one of the people doing that, I have concern for your health and long-term benefit for it. So I don't want to see people starting with speed. Look, if you're super strong and super flexible and all of that great stuff, have at it. Go do your speed work, right? But most of us don't start in that bucket. We don't start being super strong, super flexible, all of that stuff. Most of us need to develop those traits, and then eventually we can kind of get into these speed things once we've developed that good base of movement, right? Power exercises. One of the things, again, I don't like about some of these programs is the amount of repetitions they do, right? You have doing tons and tons and tons of swing. The science for power is pretty simple. If you want to develop power and speed, you do high intensity work with low repetitions. You don't do tons of swings. You do minimal amounts of swings with maximal amount of exercise. And that holds true if you're doing plyometric jumping. That holds true if you're doing Olympic type lifting. That holds true if you're doing medicine ball work. It doesn't really matter. That is the physiologic response we're trying to train and create. One of the other, negatives maybe of some of this being like the Mach 3 program, not that it's a negative in its application, is just the reality of it takes up a lot of space to use some of the equipment that they use, and you have to have a lot of space available, right? So what can I do besides super speed and Mach 3 and all of this cool stuff? There are plenty of things you can do. Like I mentioned, there's medicine ball training, which has been kind of around for a very long time. We can do different rotary movements, all kinds of different movements with medicine balls. Again, I want to do them as ballistic and as hard as possible. If you are doing medicine ball training and or jump training, again, which is another thing we can do, or we call plyometric training, you have to be doing maximal effort. If you are jumping or throwing at 80, 85% effort, you are not going to get a power change. You need to be pushing yourself to the highest limit humanly possible. The biggest mistake I see with medicine ball and plyometric training is volume is too high, intensity is too low. We need to reverse that around. We need high intensity, low volume, right? So low amounts of reps, good amount of rest between exercises or sets, and maximal effort, right? Other things we can do, right? Like I said, we got plyometrics, we got these types of programs, we got medicine ball training. We can do Olympic weightlifting. Olympic weightlifting is another great way to do it. Clean, snatches, all those things. If you're going to go down that path, you need to get a coach. Let's remember that Olympic weightlifting, clean, snatch, those are sports. People do those in the Olympics. You can win medals. They are very technical lifts that take a lot of time and effort to create really good expertise at executing these lifts if you want to get the benefits out of them. I see a lot of people doing them, even on the tour, and they don't do them well. And even though it looks nice that they're doing those lifts, I can promise you they're not getting any type of speed gain or power gain out of it because their execution of the technical lift is not very good. Here's a simple one that I really love, right? Just hit your driver. Go to the range. If you have a net in your house, whatever you got, put a ball on the tee. Hit it as hard as you can. Literally, give me a maximal effort. That's going to take you 1.5 seconds to hit that ball. You are going to wait the whole rest of the minute, and then you're going to do it again. And then you're going to wait the whole rest of the minute, and you're going to do it again. So you're basically getting 58 seconds of rest for every 2 seconds of work that you're going to do, and you're going to do that. It's a 10-minute exercise. You're going to hit 10 balls as hard as you can, resting the rest of the minute in between each one. Do not worry about where the ball goes, how the quality of contact, all of that type of stuff, right? This is just about speed. You're just trying to hit it as hard as you can. Imagine you're in a long drive contest. Someone says $1 million for the longest ball, and every one of those 10 swings is literally as hard as humanly possible. This is great if you have some young junior golfers who are trying to develop speed because you're really tapping into that neural component of what we're trying to do, right? So I have the kind of prepackaged programs. I have the med balls. I have the plyometrics. I have Olympic weightlifting. I have hitting my own drivers. So there's lots of opportunities of things of what I can do to help me become more powerful. Again, the icing on the cake. So for most people out there, power is really cool, but what are we really trying to do? We're looking to hit the ball further. Everything we've talked about today is about increasing club head speed, right? If you're trying to hit the ball or maximize distance off the tee, club head speed is one piece. As a fitness guy, that's what I spent my time as a strength and conditioning coach talking about today. But let's always remember that impact alignments, making sure you're hitting up on the ball, having properly fitted equipment, not having too much spin. There's lots of centerness of contact. There's lots of technical golf things that also can help you hit the ball further. To maximize performance, what we're trying to do is take this increase of club head speed from the physical components and match that up with optimal impact alignments, equipment, etc., from the golfing perspective as well, right? So I hope this helps people better understand some of the real basics of what power is. And if you fall in any of these typical buckets, simple, easy things you can do to start getting involved with helping yourself get better. In part two, we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive here. This is going to be for people who are really interested in kind of some modern science, more technical training stuff, you name it. We're going to look at force-velocity relationships. We're going to look at elasticity. And then we're going to talk about a concept that I call resistors and releasers. I'm going to talk about different tour players who use these different strategies, why it works for them, and then how you can identify for yourself, are you a resistor or are you a releaser, and what type of training you should be doing in the gym. Most of the time, we just lift weights, or we just do plyos, we just do this, or we just do that, and we don't really know how to assess and dial in exactly what you should be doing, how heavy, how fast, how this, how that, how we really create a prescription as detailed as possible for you. So in part 2, check us out, and I'm going to dig into a little bit of more of the modern science of speed development. Thanks for listening. Please give us a follow on social and check out our website at www.bensheargolf.com for all of our programs and products. Also, be on the lookout for our next episode as we continue to discuss the best of everything golf performance.